Tonight, you drift gently into ancient Rome, where people got high in ways you absolutely were never taught in school. You open your eyes to the soft glow of dusk over ancient Rome, that warm, honey-colored light that makes even crumbling stone look like it's been moisturized recently. The air carries a mix of wood smoke, distant laughter, and if you inhale deeply enough, a faint medicinal aroma drifting from a nearby stall. You're not sure what it is, but your nose suggests quietly and politely that it might get you in trouble. You stretch your legs, feeling the cobblestones under your sandals, and take your first slow steps into a bustling street. You probably won't make it through this day, but that's all right because it's meant to lull you, not challenge you. Since you're already here, in this dreamy little pocket of antiquity, I'll gently remind you to like and subscribe so you never miss another sleepy stroll through weird history. And before we go any further, drop a comment with your location and your local time. Romans loved timekeeping, though they were admittedly terrible at it. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You walk past merchants closing their awnings as night approaches. Lamps flicker to life, casting shimmering halos on the plastered walls. A man nearby grinds herbs with exaggerated concentration, like he's auditioning for the role of most serious herbalist in Rome. He glances at you, nods, and continues grinding something that smells suspiciously familiar. A major historical fact slips softly into place. The Romans used opium, cannabis, and a medley of psychoactive plants long before modern medicine filed them under restricted substances. Doctors, including some surprisingly competent ones, believed these plants soothed pain, calmed anxiety, and in certain cases opened the mind to the favor of the gods. As you continue down the street, a woman waves a small clay bowl at you. Inside rests a mixture of poppy resin and honey. She gestures as if to say, "Go on, it's practically healthy," which is always a great sign that you should absolutely not ingest something. Still, the sweet smell makes you pause. Then comes the night's first obscure cultural tidbit. Roman upper-class dinner parties sometimes included dream-enhancing wines, infused with herbs and flowers that could alter perception. Think of it like ancient mixology, but with fewer safety guidelines and infinitely more gods watching from above, judging your choices. You make your way toward a shaded archway where the city's hum softens. A gentle breeze carries the scent of laurel leaves from a nearby wreath-maker's stall. He hums as he works, though the tune is so monotone you suspect it might double as a remedy for insomnia. Historians still debate whether Romans fully understood the addictive nature of some of these herbs, or whether they simply shrugged and said, Jupiter will handle it. You pause near a mural depicting the god Bacchus lounging with his signature expression. Half ecstatic, half like he's considering a nap. The artist really understood the spiritual energy of, I could party or I could sleep, and honestly it's a coin toss. The night grows deeper, softer, quieter. You hear distant instruments, flute, lyre, the faint rhythm of a drum. It all blends together into a soundscape warm enough to melt into. You take one more step, feeling the weight of the day melt from your shoulders, and follow the lamps further into the Roman twilight. You move deeper into the city, where the streets narrow and twist like a maze designed by someone who had never seen a straight line in their life. The lamps flicker more gently here, casting wide golden circles over smooth stone and wooden shutters. You feel as if you've slipped behind the main stage of Rome, into the quieter parts, where daily life happens away from the senators, generals, and loud men who love hearing themselves talk. A cat crosses your path, tail upright, looking at you with the exact expression you'd expect from a Roman cat. Vaguely judgmental but unwilling to actually do anything about it. It disappears into a small doorway, and you follow the light instead, not the cat, because every great story begins by not following the suspicious animal. You hear the splash of water from a nearby fountain. Beside it stands a man in a clean white tunic, stirring something inside a bronze pot with the seriousness of a poet writing his life's masterpiece. The scent rises, floral, earthy, slightly intoxicating. You recognize one of the ingredients. Wild cannabis, which Romans often used not for recreation, but as a medicinal tea. Well, mostly medicinal, sometimes recreational, sometimes both. Ancient people weren't good at boundaries. The man glances up. For headaches, he says, or for when your mother-in-law visits. Humor, a universal human trait across time. You stroll onward, hearing soft music from an open doorway. Inside is a gathering of women weaving garlands and chatting in low tones. On the table rests a bowl of dried henbane seeds, another Roman favorite for altering the mind. The seeds glimmer in the lamplight like tiny, suspicious jewels. One woman carefully drops a few into a clay cup of wine. For vivid dreams, she murmurs. Here lies your next major historical fact. Henbane was widely used in ancient Rome in small doses as a sedative and painkiller, but in larger doses, it caused hallucinations. Imagine a plant that sits politely in your medicine box but can also teleport your consciousness into another dimension if you're not careful. A woman stirs the cup and says something about leaving the body behind to see the spirit world. Another woman shrugs and says it just helps her sleep better. Scholars still debate whether these rituals were religious experiences or simply early forms of self-care with extra steps. You step back outside, where the night is settling into its final cozy phase. You pass a bakery closing for the evening, the warm scent of leftover bread still drifting through the air. The baker waves, flour dusting his hair like early snow. Beside him hangs a wreath of poppy pods, half decoration, half medicine cabinet. You remember the street you walked past earlier, the herbalist's stall glowing like an ember in the dusk. It's quieter now, but you can still hear faint grinding noises, like he's preparing his supplies for tomorrow's customers. Something about that rhythmic sound feels deeply calming, like ancient Rome's version of white noise. Your next obscure cultural tidbit emerges as you walk by a group of musicians preparing for a small nighttime ceremony. Romans believed certain incense mixtures, including cannabis seeds thrown onto hot coals, could purify the air before calling on household gods. Imagine explaining to your landlord that you're not smoking anything questionable. It's just divine air freshening. The night deepens. You hear only muted footsteps, soft conversations, and the gentle sigh of wind through alleyways. The city feels like it's tucking itself in, pulling its woolen blanket tight across its sprawling form. You continue walking until the lamps become fewer, the streets more open, and the stars above stretch wide enough to make you stop and breathe. Here, in this quiet corner of Rome, you feel something settle. Some blend of history, warmth, and herbal mystery. You let your eyelids grow heavy as the night wraps itself around you, soft as linen, warm as a hearth. And your journey continues, whenever you're ready. You wake slowly the next morning, not because anything is loud, but because the light itself feels like a gentle invitation. The Roman sun doesn't burst through your window. It sort of stretches in, like someone mildly late to a meeting but still holding a warm loaf of bread. You sit up on your straw-stuffed mattress, noticing that the scent of last night's herbs still lingers faintly in the air. You didn't exactly get high, just lightly kissed by Roman aromatherapy. Congratulations! You've already survived longer than some skeptical modern historians would expect. You wash your face with cool water from a clay basin, and it feels like dipping your head into the ancient equivalent of a minimalist spa. Romans don't always have running water, but they do have a talent for making simple things look classy. Even a bowl of water feels ceremonial here. Outside, the street you passed on your first evening is waiting for you again. Remember? The one with the smells that couldn't decide whether to be food or garbage. In the morning, it's calmer. Bakers are sliding dough into ovens. A donkey chews something that definitely wasn't meant for donkeys. And a woman selling figs shouts at children who look suspiciously sticky. You join the flow of the street, letting it carry you like a very slow, very chaotic river. Your goal this morning isn't to find breakfast, although that's tempting. No, you're following the trail of another Roman method for chemically altering consciousness, opium poppy concoctions. A major historical fact, softly drifting your way. Romans used poppy-based mixtures as painkillers, sleep aids, and sometimes recreational relaxation. The poppy itself grows easily in the Mediterranean climate, and its sap, once dried, was a little packet of dreams, ready to dissolve in wine, honey, or sometimes a kind of medicinal syrup. Ancient physicians like Galen wrote about it with the sort of calm authority modern doctors use when explaining how much caffeine is too much caffeine. Spoiler: it's always more than you're currently drinking. As you walk toward a small apothecary, a shopkeeper leans out of her door and playfully warns you, "Don't let your mind wander too far today." You smile politely, not mentioning that your mind wandered away days ago, and you're just hoping it will eventually send a postcard. Inside, the apothecary is dim, cool, and filled with the comforting clutter of jars, bundles, powders, and strange little tools that look half medicinal, half criminal. A thin thread of incense curls in the air. The apothecary, a thin man with a thick mustache, greets you with the slow, measured tone of someone who claims he is definitely not selling anything questionable. Absolutely not. Only respectable concoctions for respectable citizens. He lifts a small clay jar of poppy resin, its surface dark and sticky like ancient caramel. Helps with sleep, he says, or with thinking too much. You don't tell him that you haven't entirely stopped thinking about the dancing Saturn worshippers from yesterday. You simply nod, taking in the earthy scent that rises from the jar. A weird cultural tidbit drifts into your ears like a gossiping bird. Some Romans believed poppy seeds sprinkled on doorways could deflect the evil eye. Which is adorable, considering poppy seeds themselves will not deflect anything except maybe your chances of passing a modern drug test. The apothecary prepares a diluted poppy and honey mixture for you, swirling it like a tiny potion. You sip it, and it warms your throat, spreading through your body like a quiet sigh. It doesn't knock you out. It just makes the sharp edges of reality a little rounder, like life has been lightly sanded for your comfort. Historians still debate whether the Romans used these mixtures more for legitimate pain relief or, well, recreational unwinding. The apothecary leans toward the latter category. You can tell by the wink he gives you for no reason. You leave the shop drifting slightly, not in any dangerous way, just pleasantly untethered. You walk back onto the bustling street as the city wakes further. A man leading two goats asks if you're all right. You nod and hope he didn't notice you responding 2 seconds too late. A slow breeze rolls through the alley, carrying the scent of olives and wet stone. You wander until you reach the forum again, where men debate loudly about taxes, politics, and which philosopher had the worst haircut. You sit on a wide step and listen, letting the poppy's softness blend with the ambient hum of the city. A merchant tries selling you a suspiciously large melon. A child points at you as though you're the strangest thing he's seen today, which, given this city, is statistically impressive. Your morning drifts toward midday, the Mediterranean sun warming everything, including your pleasantly loosened mood. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds wash over you. You probably won't make it through the rest of this day without feeling even more sleepy. When you open your eyes again, the forum has grown louder and busier. People move like bright fish in a warm, chaotic sea. You stretch your legs, feeling that familiar Roman combination of alertness and gentle drowsiness that seems to follow every herbal encounter in this city. You take one of the shaded streets leading away from the forum, where the air cools instantly, like stepping into the world's first naturally air-conditioned hallway. The shadows form long, soft shapes across the stone pavement, and you follow them until you reach the riverbank. The Tiber moves slowly this afternoon, heavy with summer light. A group of young men lounge beside the water, passing around what looks like a small, carved wooden cup. When they notice you, they grin and wave you over with a level of enthusiasm suspiciously disproportionate to your presence. This is usually a sign that someone is sharing something mildly questionable. You approach and they offer you the cup. Inside is a mixture of fermented herbs, a mild psychoactive brew Romans sometimes used in social gatherings. It's not strong. More like a cousin of wine who shows up to parties wearing sandals and telling stories about feeling the universe breathe. You take a slow sip. The flavor is earthy, tangy, and slightly bitter, as though a plant decided it wanted to grow up to be sophisticated. A major historical fact floats into view like a leaf on the river. Romans experimented with psychoactive plants in ritual and social contexts, especially in Dionysian gatherings and small group ceremonies. You sit with them by the water. One of the men strums a tiny lyre, plinking out a tune that sounds like a lullaby for bees. Another draws shapes in the sand with a stick, explaining quite confidently that all of life can be divided into three categories: things that grow, things that don't grow, and things that pretend they aren't growing but absolutely are. You nod because honestly he might be onto something. As you drink a little more of the brew, the conversation lightens further. Someone jokes about how Romans measure time by shadows, which means cloudy days are basically government-approved excuses for showing up late. Another man insists he once saw a senator get tipsy on herbal wine and lecture a statue for 45 minutes. The river glimmers softly, and you glance back toward the city. The streets look more golden than usual, as though the light has been dipped in honey. The herbal mixture doesn't make you high. It just smooths the moment into something slightly more dream-shaped. Eventually, you stand and walk along the river, following a dirt path where reeds sway gently like old men nodding off during philosophical debates. You're not heading anywhere specific, which is extremely on-brand for someone drinking ancient plant cocktails beside a river. You run into an elderly woman collecting herbs at the water's edge. She squints at you, then offers a handful of leaves. For clarity, she says. You accept them even though they smell like something that has never once considered being clear. A weird cultural tidbit. Some Romans believed certain river herbs could protect the mind from nightmares when hung above the bed. You thank her and slip the herbs into your belt, fully intending to pretend they work. As you continue walking, the world feels both present and distant, as though the city exists inside a gentle glass bubble. The poppy from earlier mixes with the fermented herbs just enough to give everything a warm, slightly fuzzy outline. Cart rattles by. Two lovers argue softly. A dog sniffing an imaginary scent trots past you like it's late for a very important meeting. Historians still debate whether herbal mixtures like the ones you've sampled today were considered recreational, medicinal, or spiritual. You're beginning to suspect the answer is simply yes. By late afternoon, the sun dips low, casting long shadows over the riverbank. You follow the path back toward the heart of the city, your mind softening into a peaceful haze. The day has slipped by quietly, like sand through a relaxed hand. You return to the street from your earlier mornings, the one that keeps popping back into your life like a persistent character in a very laid-back novel. You pass the apothecary again, the scent of poppy and honey drifting into the air. You breathe deeply, feeling warm, mellow, and entirely Roman. And somewhere in the distance, a musician plucks a final note from his lyre, letting it hang in the air like a soft invitation to rest. You drift forward through the Roman twilight, the air cooling in that soft and strangely lavender way it sometimes does after a day full of noise, heat, and the low-level absurdity that seems baked into Roman life like raisins in bread. You move past the same marketplace you wandered through earlier. Remember that herb stall piled with bundles of dried poppy pods? Yes, it's still there, although the vendor seems to be half asleep now, slumped on a stool like a man who has sampled far too much of his own inventory. The stones beneath your sandals feel warm from the day's sun, almost humming, almost like a cat that has settled into your lap and decided you are its property now. The streets are quieter tonight. Lamps glow from windows. Somewhere nearby, someone is playing a reed flute very badly, the kind of sound that makes you wonder whether the musician truly believes they are good, or if they're perhaps high enough not to care. Tonight's destination waits just ahead. A modest Roman house with an open doorway lit from within. You step inside, guided by the gentle murmur of voices and the faint, unmistakable scent of fumiga. Ritual smoke, drifting in little curls under the ceiling beams. Inside, a group of Romans sit around a low table, passing around something that looks suspiciously like a dish of crushed herbs. You may recognize the look on their faces, half dreamy, half philosophical, as though each of them is bravely fighting the gravitational pull of their own eyelids. One woman lazily waves you in. "Sit," she says, smiling in the slow-motion way of someone who has absolutely no plans for the rest of the week. You settle onto a cushion, and a man wearing an elaborately braided beard begins telling you about the history of Roman recreational herbs, gesturing dramatically even though his eyes barely stay open. Here, at last, is the major historical fact of this section. Romans regularly burned certain psychoactive plants, particularly henbane, during rituals, baths, and even in private gatherings, inhaling the fumes for calming or mildly hallucinatory effects. He demonstrates this by tossing a pinch of dried henbane onto a small charcoal burner. The air grows thicker, warmer, and just a little bit bendy around the edges, like a fresco painted on soft wax instead of plaster. You feel a slow, velvety heaviness spreading through your limbs. Someone hands you a cup of herbal wine, another Roman favorite, which does absolutely nothing to clarify your mental state. But don't worry, everyone else in the room looks equally confused, which is oddly comforting. Now comes your obscure tidbit. Some Romans believed henbane was sacred to Apollo, and a few even stuffed the seeds into pillows, insisting it produced prophetic dreams. You're not sure how prophetic they were, though. Possibly the dreams were just blurry enough to seem symbolic. The man with the braided beard leans close to you and whispers. Historians still debate whether Roman physicians encouraged this or merely tolerated it. Then he slumps back with the satisfied air of someone who has contributed something scholarly and can now rest for the remainder of the century. The room glows with lamplight, soft yellow flames flickering on plaster walls painted with scenes of vineyards, olive groves, and mythic figures doing mythic things. Mostly lounging because even gods get tired in Roman art. The atmosphere is warm, relaxed, and pleasantly muddled. Someone across the room begins giggling for no clear reason. Another person is staring at their own hand as though it contains highly classified information. It's the kind of gathering where you suspect no one will remember who said what in the morning, but everyone will insist it was deeply meaningful. A breeze flows through the doorway, carrying the nighttime smell of fig trees and distant cooking fires. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the soundscape wash over you. The murmurs, the crackle of burning herbs, the soft thump of someone accidentally dropping a cup and then politely pretending it didn't happen. Slowly, the voices grow quieter. People shift reclining positions. Lamps burn lower. The warmth settles onto you like a gentle blanket. The story has walked you through busy Roman streets, into temples filled with incense, across feasts, baths, and herb markets, and now into this quiet, soothing haze where everything feels far away and pleasantly slowed down, as though time itself is reclining on a couch. The room grows still, the air thick with drifting herbal smoke that rises in lazy spirals, softening the lamplight into amber halos that glow like warm stars caught indoors. You breathe slowly, drifting with the rhythm of the space around you. Each small sound, the quiet shuffle of a cushion, the low, drowsy hum of someone half-speaking, the faint pop of charcoal settling, seems softened at the edges, as though wrapped in cloth before reaching your ears. You lean back, feeling the cushion cradle you, steady and warm. Your body sinks just slightly, the way soft clay settles into the shape of a gentle cup. Outside, the night moves softly through the city. A breeze brushes past the doorway, bringing with it the earthy scent of nighttime gardens, olive leaves, fig bark, and the faint sweetness of ripening grapes. Even the distant footsteps of late-night wanderers sound unhurried, softened by the dust of ancient streets. You feel the pull of rest in your limbs, the way your shoulders loosen, the way your breathing slows without your telling it to. The conversations around you settle into a soft, rhythmic murmur, like waves brushing a quiet shore. Each voice blends into the next, indistinct, soothing, familiar in the way any peaceful gathering becomes when your mind begins to drift. Somewhere, a lamp flickers, and shadows waver gently along the wall, bending like tall reeds in evening wind. The herbal scent grows milder, floating around you like a faint memory of summer fields. The world narrows to warmth, softness, and a sense of ancient stillness. You feel suspended in this Roman twilight, safe, unhurried, softened by time. You let yourself drift, carried along by the last traces of lamplight and the quiet breath of the ancient city, until the story dissolves into the gentlest darkness, and sleep takes the rest of the journey for you.